Hey everyone, this is my week 4 pre-discussion vlog on Lolita. I hope you all had a great weekend and I'm looking forward to our class discussions this week. So to begin, on Friday I mentioned how I was struggling with the transition from reading Mrs. Dalloway to reading Lolita, and I think a lot of it has to do with the content and generally just being uncomfortable with the messages and ideas of the book. I find that I still am uncomfortable reading it, and I often find myself cringing and having to reread some of the passages. But as I read through the book, I'm starting to become used to it, and it's becoming a little bit easier to read. I don't know if that feeling of being uncomfortable will ever go away just because of the content, but other than that, I find that the reading Lolita has been a lot easier than reading Mrs. Dalloway, and I think I contribute that to just the writing style. Oftentimes with Mrs. Dalloway, I had to reread passages simply because I didn't understand them or I didn't know what was going on. But in Lolita, I've pretty much understood majority of what has been happening, and I just think I'm more familiar with the writing style of this book just because it seems similar to some of the other novels I've enjoyed reading. So to begin our discussion, the quote I found is on page 45, and it starts with Thursday. Last night we sat on the piazza, the Haze woman, Lolita and I. Warm dusk had deepened into amorous darkness. The old girl had finished relating in great detail the plot of a movie she and Al had seen sometime in the winter. The boxer had fallen extremely low when he met the old priest, who had been a boxer himself in his robust youth and could still slug a sinner. We sat on cushions heaped on the floor, and Al was between the woman and me. She had squeezed herself in, the pet. So I chose this particular quote because I think it represents Nabokov's writing style, and I think it shows the pattern that I've seen throughout the novel, and this pattern would be the use of parentheses. Many times throughout the book, Nabokov uses parentheses to kind of elaborate on different ideas. He'll say something and then immediately after he'll put parentheses, and he'll either elaborate on that idea or he'll add extra information, or sometimes it even seems like it's kind of just a side note that, someone would randomly think of, to say in a conversation. So that leads me to my question, and that would be, what is the purpose or the use of using these parentheses in the way that Nabokov did? In other words, why is it important to include this extra information, and how does it contribute to the message that Nabokov is trying to send his readers? I think this particular quote is important because I think it kind of shows the relationship between the different parentheses that Nabokov uses. For example, in the beginning of the quote, he's talking about a movie, that Haze and Lolita had previously watched, and he's discussing the boxer in the movie, and he says, in parentheses, who had been a boxer himself in his robust youth and could still slug a sinner. And this kind of just extra information, it's kind of background information, and I wouldn't say it's unnecessary, but it definitely, I don't think contributes anything to the writing, in my personal opinion. I think it's just kind of like an afterthought and, background information. But further on in the passage, when he's talking about sitting next to Lolita and Haze, he says, in parentheses, she had squeezed herself in, the pet. And I think this quote is, this particular parenthesis is incredibly important because it shows the relationship between Humbert and Lolita starting, to develop. So I can understand how that certain parentheses is incredibly important, to the overall message of the book. So I'm looking forward to discussing these ideas in class tomorrow, and I'll see everyone then.